Hello and welcome to the Journal of Expressive Writing open mic and special author panel that we are doing tonight. It's June 12th, 2024. I'm Kelly Dumar, and I am your host of our monthly program that is sponsored by the Journal of Expressive Writing, which was founded and is edited by Jen Minotti, who is here tonight. And Jen, why don't you unmute, if you will, and just say a couple of words of welcome.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. I am so thrilled. Kelly and I love celebrating people's work, especially when they have new publications out. And so this is our second annual panel of authors. And so the people here you're going to hear from have published in the Journal of Expressive Writing, and they have new works that have just come out or about to come out. So we want to congratulate everybody, and we're thrilled to hear from them, and also 6 people in our open mic portion of the event tonight. So thanks everybody for being here.
And Jen, I think we did invite people who had a book in the last 2 years, just as a reminder about that. And there was one other thing I wanted to say. Yes, if you're reading in the open mic, please make sure that your name in the little Hollywood square says the name that you're signed up and registered to read from, so that Jen can find you. She's going to come looking for you when it's time for us to do the open mic. Let me tell you how we're going to work tonight. And that is that after I read a poem of welcome, we are going to hear from our selected panel to introduce us to a reading from their book. They're going to read, each author is going to read for 5 minutes, and then we will go through all the readers that are going to read for 5 minutes. I'll introduce them to you. Then we're going to have a little bit of a Q&A. So if you have a question while you're listening to one of the readers, please feel free to ask it in the chat room, and I can return to that question and hopefully ask it when we have the discussion with the authors. Also, just for those of you who are here for the first time, you may not know we have a really super welcoming, friendly, supportive community here, and it's perfectly acceptable and desirable for you to write comments of appreciation in the chat room. It's our way of sort of, since we don't give applause officially, if you're moved by something someone writes, it's wonderful to mention that to them. And also, Jen will be putting live links to the author's books and probably their websites, and probably also live link to what they have had published in the Journal of Expressive Writing. So just so you know, you can follow those links and support the authors that are presenting tonight. So those of you who are here regularly know that I really like to choose a poem to read just to start us off and have sort of a welcoming to our community and set the stage a little bit for the emotional tone that we like to set for our community of expressive writers. And tonight I have selected Rosemary Watola Tromer's poem, Big Lesson. Today, it feels so simple. We are here to take care of each other. How could we ever forget? As if soil could forget, it is here to feed the trees. As if trees could forget, they are here to feed the soil. How could anything ever get in the way of generosity? How could we greet each other? How could we ever greet each other with any words besides, how can I help you? As if light could forget, it is here to help illuminate. As if dark could forget, it is here to help us heal. So I am pleased to welcome tonight. And if you're unmuted, would you please mute? I'm going to introduce our first panelist of the evening for her 5 minutes, C.K. Sobey. So let me find Kaz. I'm going to go ahead and give her the spotlight treatment. Kaz, wave your hand at me. There you are. Thank you. And you can go ahead and unmute. So Kaz Sobey continues a life steeped in curiosity. In 2020, she retired from her professional business, hypnotherapy, and facilitating soul collage groups to spend more time re-envisioning the next phase of her life. Kaz, her nom de plume, her author's pen name is Kaz. She's lived in the Valley Forge area of Pennsylvania since 1999. You can find her cooking up a new recipe in her kitchen or writing her weekly post, From My Chair to Yours, published in Substack. CK has several daily rituals she enjoys besides cooking. Walking is also one of her rituals. Her newest book, Outpourings Volume 2, Musings, Wool Gathering, and Ghosts, is Volume 2 of her well-reviewed book, Musings, Wool Gathering, and Ghosts. She has 3 earlier books and is currently taking some time off from writing her posts to spend time on her next book. Kaz's writing has been featured in the Reflectionary, Publishers Weekly, Reader's Views Inside Scoop, and the Midwest Review.
Line, free leaf dog, bitch. I got foreigns all in it, yo. Oh, inherited ass. Everything I got, I made on my own.
We have to, I think, sign out and come back if.
Yep, I got him out.
Okay.
Okay, we're on it. That rarely happens. Sorry, everybody. Sorry, Kaz, for the disruption. She has 3 earlier books and is currently taking time off from writing her posts to spend time on her next one. Her writing has been featured. I mentioned where it's been featured. Okay, and 101 words also. You can read more about her books, and her posts, and you can also purchase in the link that will be put into the website, and we'll also put her email address in there as well. Kaz, welcome. Thanks for being here tonight to introduce us to your work.
Thank you, Kelly. And I'm so happy to be here. So I will be reading from Outpourings. My pen name is CK Sobey. Everybody calls me Cass. I will try and read 2 stories. Let's see how it goes. Letting my edges fray. I think about having a breakdown, or maybe it's a breakup. One day I may allow it. Should I completely lose control and let myself have that nervous collapse that seems imminent? On certain days, it screams to be allowed. Experiencing a combination of little ruptures simmers what feels like an eventual ripping apart. I'm feeling that way today. I go to the grocery, pharmacy, and run errands almost daily. Then, on a particular morning, or late at night, a disturbance bubbles up from somewhere deep inside. It's uncomfortable, yet familiar. It grows, bringing the fear that I may finally be falling apart. A silent scream is building up around my fringes. Do I allow the carefully tended edges of myself to unravel? What do I lose if I do? Perhaps what holds us together is our image of what others see. Unraveling may be beneficial to me, but a little at a time. I do my best to separate myself emotionally when I recognize the disturbance beginning, finding it brings in a wiser self. I call it grandmother wisdom. To sit more often in aided dialogue with the God of my understanding, I listen and get in touch with what's going on with me. What's waiting to be rewoven is always less complicated than it appears. The who I am becomes a more interesting blend. And once I unravel the knots along the way, a design is uncovered, like finding lace under bits and pieces of old, worn fabric. The complexities of the design are unique. For me, the human design created is one I didn't know before the break. To give myself permission to unravel my edging fills me with emotional muscle. If I'm paying attention, and I believe I must. Parts of me scatter away, while other parts knit fresher aspects of me, creating more space for a larger tableau, a broader representation of me, who I am still becoming. The design is never quite finished. The edging itself is a life story of the knots that hold my fringes together. This morning I listened to the rain. I woke up this morning to the sound of rain. I lay in bed and listened, cozy, enveloped by the Christmas spirit in my cocoon of flannel sheets. Heavy droplets created a multitude of sounds as they touched down on different surfaces outside my window. How many others were joining me to listen to this extravaganza at this early hour of the morning? Soon, the rising sun will join in concert with the rain. I continued with thoughts of fancy for some time, awakening morning fluff, wool gathering. I never know where this mood may take me. And I'm lying in bed longer these mornings and sipping my coffee rather than moving into my chair to take pen in hand, beginning the morning journaling, a ritual I've practiced for over half a century. Sounds ancient. I'm not old, but perhaps ancient. This extended time of lounging in bed, at ease before beginning my day, is a new way of beginning for me. Another practice of paying attention. A time for me to breathe and stretch. Today was no different, but it's always different. How lucky I am to have a warm bed to be in before I rise to meet the day.
Thank you so much, Kaz. Guesses. Kaz, CK Sobey. Thank you. And next up, I want to introduce Birdman 313 and welcome you into the spotlight, Birdman 313. And let me read his introduction, please. Birdman 313 is originally from Benton Harbor, Michigan, and a graduate of John Wesley College with a BA in social science, an AA in networking admin from ITT Tech, and a computer tech certificate from JTI. Birdman 313 has been writing poetry for the past 40 years. He has 13 published poetry books and 4 published poetry chapbooks, and has been published in several journals and newspapers. Birdman 313 has several Editor's Choice Awards and 1 international award for his poetry. He's been a guest on several blog talk shows, Zoom and Skype open mic readings, and he was presented a plaque for the poem She, along with a gold medallion and a pendant. His video, Forgotten Time, won first place in the Light Poetic Ministry Poetry Video Contest. His poems and video, 1,000 Miles from Nowhere, Moments in a Dream, A Day in the Forest, and The Waves of Emotion were featured on Coffee, Wine, and Words on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, and Anchor. His latest book, Outdoor Memories, was published in April 2024. Welcome, Birdman 313. We're glad you're here.
Good evening. I'm gonna read. This is my book, and I created the cover. It's a picture of Coronado Beach when we was there last summer. In September. The first poem I'm gonna read is actually across the street from the hotel when we stayed across from the ocean. It had an ocean beach, and it's titled "Colors So Beautiful." Looking up at the beauty of an orange sky, remind us that life is like an empty canvas where we can create a lasting beauty. The vibrant colors look magical and resilient and are painted with unwavering passion. The ocean continues to sparkle with deliberate strokes, while the waves help to create a masterpiece. At the end of a cool evening, darkness begins to move in to take over another day. During the hours of dusk, the stars and moon appear to dazzle in beauty. All this beauty opens up the deepest corners of your heart, making conversations more meaningful in the celebration of life. The journey back will be between the edges of the pier by the ocean and curbside of the street. Enjoying the moon, stars, and colorful skies of the universe leaves a lasting mark on our hearts, mind, and can inspire us to create our masterpiece. And I also did a video of that. I have videos on my YouTube channel, and most of the poems in this book, it's just what it says, outdoor memories. My next one is because we do go to Vegas, and we do tours there. And we went to Red Rock Canyon, Valley of Fire. So I wrote this piece about being out there. And it's titled Out in the Desert. Go out into the desert to enjoy the sun and beautiful mountain scenery. This is a place to let all your thoughts roam and your worries disappear. There are no people, loud noises, or pollution to disturb the quietness that the desert brings. The beautiful colors of nature can be seen everywhere. The dusk and winds are calm. No wild animals or creatures can be seen during the middle of a heated day. The land is dry as the sun bears down, soaking up what little moisture that remains. The desert is a place where loneliness thrives. No one can interrupt your thinking. Being alone out in the desert can sometimes be good therapy. Cactus, dry bush, sand, and dust can be seen for miles. There is no water or rain in sight, just the sun shining brightly over the mountains, standing tall and colorful. The blue sky is clear, with few clouds in sight. The only voice you hear is your own. As the sun says goodbye to another beautiful hot day, you may hear a coyote howling in the distance, waiting for the moon to rise. It gives a warning that he is coming out to patrol the dry, sandy land to search for food. The lonely desert can be a place to find peace and solitude to release all your troubles. That's also, I have a video for that. I do a lot of videos with my poetry. I have time for one more. Okay, this one here is titled Nature's Garden. Whenever we travel, we always find a Japanese garden to go to. And we go to the ones in LA. We go to the ones in San Diego. Oh man, Flint Ridge, but we go there. It's called Nature's Garden. When walking through the garden, let solitude and silence become your guiding force. The earth knows you have been there by footprints you leave imprinted in the soil. The world will not forget where you have traveled, nor will your life be forgotten. A garden has so much to offer, like the beauty of the ponds flowing with fish. The grass turns green under the blue sky with a few clouds and the sun shining brightly. Springtimes bring you even more beauty to the garden with its multitude of blooming flowers. It is a beautiful day to spend with nature. You can hear the streams and waterfall as the breeze whispers in your ears. Walking through the garden filled with so much beauty present a reason to respect nature. And give thanks for such a relaxing day. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Birdman 313, thank you so much.
Yes.
And next up, we have Mona Mehas. Mona, welcome. Mona, am I saying your last name correctly?
Yes, exactly.
Good, okay.
Most people don't.
All right, well, let me introduce you. Mona Mehas, her writes poetry and prose from the perspective of a retired disabled teacher in Indiana, USA. A Pushcart nominee, her work has appeared in over 70 journals, anthologies, and online museums. 2 of her poems received first place honors in the 2023 Poetry Society of Indiana Fall Contest. Mona's poetry chapbook, Questions I Didn't Know I'd Asked, published in February 2024, is available from LJ McD Communications and Amazon. Her second poetry collection is forthcoming in July 2024. She's querying her first novel. Welcome, Mona.
Thank you. So this is questions I didn't know I'd asked. And it is inspired by tarot and oracle cards. I will start just reading from the front. The Queen of Tea. When tea is gone, I read the leaves left behind in your cup, looking for signs of your future. It makes no difference what kind you drink. The leaves tell me your story. I am the Queen of Tea. Herbal tea carries a subtle air of rose, chrysanthemum, lavender. Rooibos identifies your wisdom. I'm charged, traipsing your crooked path, following into your psyche with ridges less defined. I gather my robes about my shoulders, my faithful dog at my side. Her smooth black head rests on my lap. Sipping my cup of white peony, I gaze at leaves of green china tea, visions of water at my feet. As the Queen of Tea, I render service to those who need my sacrifice. You sit, your questions answered. My eyes look inward to your soul. All I ask is blueberry essence with honey stirred into my cup. I stay exhausted, deep in my thoughts. You leave satisfied, your heart filled. I rinse away your tea leaves to prepare for more offerings. Lapsang Souchong in my cup. I am the Queen of Tea. This next one is called Fascinator. Under my crocheted fascinator of lace-trimmed diamonds dancing in stars, the tight weave I made hiding old scars, bringing comfort and warmth to my core. Onlookers wonder when they see under my crocheted fascinator, through my blue eyes, the ocean's shore, sandcastles unearthing secret keys. My mouth opens, language is garbled, stories untold of family lore. Under my crocheted fascinator, there comes a song from yellow warblers. Into my ears they trill and quaver, fluttering wings in quick harmony. Their breath on my face drips like honey under my crocheted fascinator. The next one is a little one called Three Wands. Three wands found on an ocean floor. In faith restore my love for thee and newfound glee. Wands change pallor of my skin, color within, leap forth in joy, their wiles employ. Forest ensemble sings refrain, happiness reigns, give thanks to earth for my rebirth. All right, the next one I'm reading is called Cobra and Elephant. Dancing Cobra visited me today, surrounded by his children. They flaked from his skin as pieces of himself. He bowed his broad head and gazed inward from his brain to his navel, creating an open space as if a surgeon had made a precise incision, but forgot to close. In that chasm grew the
Thanks
most...
for riding with Eva. If you are ending your trip, double check that all doors lock before you leave.
In that
So
chasm,
about that. Keep going, Mona.
in that chasm grew the most gentle eye I'd ever seen, deep blue and heavy-lidded. The elephant gazed at me with love and wonder, her wrinkles deep set with wisdom. She revealed generations through her eye, old struggles, and more to come. Energy beams bounced off her, pulling the cobra children to her breast. I hungered to be among them. Before elephant closed her eye, before cobra reared his head, I climbed into the portal. Their combined energy was sublime and swallowed the world. That's 4 poems. Do I have time for another
Yes,
one?
please do. Sorry you were interrupted. Go ahead, Mona.
This one is called Drowning. Drowning in my knowledge of not knowing. Lifeboat, a false rescue takes me under. Trapped by ignorance, last breath escaping, tides control the boat, rising and falling. I balloon, sick, just below surface, drowning in my knowledge of not knowing. Hair fronds mix with seaweed beneath the waves. My hand breaks through the scum, reaching empty. Gulls land on my arm. They kiss my fingers. Waves crash the boat, pulling it asunder. Drowning in my knowledge of not knowing, losing hope, great resistance, gulping air. Heaving with great effort, I land the boat. My stomach jerks as tides chase the sunset. Gulls surround me and feed me mackerel, drowning in my knowledge of not knowing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mona Mehas. All right. Next, we are going to hear from Richard Krause. Richard, there you are. Richard, you can go ahead and unmute. I think I had to mute you, so you'll need to unmute. Good. Okay, so Richard, I'm going to read your introduction and then we'll begin. Richard Krause has 3 collections of fiction published titled, Richard Krause has 3 collections of fiction published titled Studies in Insignificance, The Horror of the Ordinary, and Crawl Space and Other Stories of Limited Maneuverability. He also has 3 collections of epigrams published, Optical Biases, Eye Exams, and Blind Insights into the Writing Process. His prose poetry collection, Unashamed Observations, is scheduled to be published by Unsolicited Press in June of 2024. Richard grew up in an orphanage in Pennsylvania, drove a taxi in NYC for 5 years, and lived for 9 years in Japan, 7 of them teaching English at Ibaraki University. Currently, he's retired from teaching at a community college in Kentucky. We will share his website and details. Welcome, Richard Krause.
Okay, thank you. This is a few poems from my prose poem collection, Unashamed Observations. The first poem is called Candy. The little girl sneaks a piece of candy into her mouth. I imagine its sugars dissolving in secret, the crystals breaking down, the saliva activated and excited, rising to the occasion, the cheek sucking on the candy, the tongue biting itself to get all the pleasure the mouth can out of the surreptitious insertion of the candy, and the beauty of the eyes, they triumphant as they look around to see if anyone has noticed the orgy of pleasure the mouth has experienced, the tongue proclaiming the sweets to the roof of the mouth, drawing every nook of delight into her enjoyment, vacuuming the mouth for the emptiness of her little life unpleased, for the predeterminate stage of her own sexuality that can only be bridged by this hard structure of candy dissolving, breaking down in her mouth by her sucking on it for dear life. This is called A Little Boy's Balloon. The man is writing on the street with a pen. Without looking, he collides with a little boy's balloon. It bursts, and the boy looks wide-eyed, amazed. The man looks all around the crowd to find where the balloon was bought, but not finding that, he does the next best thing. He himself bursts into tears before the little boy, who now stares dry-eyed at the spectacle of a grown man crying in public over a burst balloon. She said she wrote me a letter on Sunday and mailed it Monday, and that there was a poem in it for me. And I waited all week and the next, trying not to jump to conclusions, trusting that even if she pasted on the incorrect postage, the rates had just changed, it would still get to me. I waited and hoped that if my world with her was tumbling, as always happened when she wouldn't see me for any length of time, I'd at least have the letter as evidence that she cared. Finally, the letter never came, and I realized that the poem she meant was that there wasn't a poem, but it was a poem too, for if by definition a poem elicits feeling, It fulfills itself. And my expectation of her letter for 3 weeks, expending every ounce of feeling every day, that was the poem. I finally realized she must have meant. Every day that I listened for the postman's scooter to bring it, and the wheels died away like the end of lines, trailing off to something inexplicable and suggestive. Or every day I swung open the door quickly and tried to see a white letter on the floor through the dark. They were the poems she was giving me. And here, all along, I concluded that she hadn't written. This one is called Teeth. His first thought was to check. Are they really her front teeth? Their evenness made him suspicious. The evenness he demanded, the proportion that would enable him to love her, was also the basis for his deepest doubts. He remembered when they were out walking in the forest. Oh, what teeth did the dentist work on? He said nonchalantly. Actually, her answer was of dire interest to him. She showed him. And which of the teeth are not real? He asked. Oh, this one right here and this one. And she kept pointing around her mouth faster than he could calculate how many, what percentage of her teeth she was actually missing before he could calibrate just what effect that would have on his own feelings for her. Was it 40% that were missing? And which ones? Yes, that was important. Were the front 2 teeth real? She didn't point to them. He was dying to ask her. Finally, unable to help himself, he blurted out, and what about these? Oh, the front ones? She backed away as she pointed to them. Oh, they're all right. But still he had his suspicions. Still they looked too straight for him. Then the incongruity of his questioning, his getting her to open her mouth here in the forest with the tallest cedar trees all around, with a blanket of pine needles on the ground, and the sun sending a radiance of light on them, must have occurred to her, for she clamped her mouth shut like a vice and would answer no more questions. She in a soft fox coat, and he's still trying to get a look inside her mouth, trying to extract from her the best he could, the truth about her missing teeth. Okay, the last one is called VD. The day X caught VD, he limped into the dining room. Dishes scattered. People rushed for the exits. VD, VD, they shouted. The cutlery twisted like corkscrews. Spirochetes, he imagined coursing through his bloodstream, rushing for the organs. X imagined all this, of course, for everyone was sitting calmly, finishing their supper. The VD was not in his bloodstream, but only in his brain, in that advanced stage of his thinking about it. Okay, thank you.
Oh, that was Richard Krause. Thank you so much, Richard. And next up, we have Rachel R. Baum. Rachel, there you are. Okay. And Rachel R. Baum is a Best of Net nominated poet, editor, and blogger. She's the editor of Funeral and Memorial Service Readings, Poems and Tributes, published by McFarland in 1999, awarded Best Nonfiction by Today's Librarian in 2000. She began writing poetry in 2021 after contracting COVID-19 and never getting better. Since then, over 80 of her poems have appeared in One Art, Jewish Literary Review, The Fair, Raven's Perch, Plain Songs, and others. She won the 2021 National Poetry Day competition from Your Fire magazine, placed second in the 2022 Shelley Poetry competition, and took third place in East Ridge Review's 2022 Three-Notched Poetry Contest. She was a finalist for the 2022 Washburn Prize and the 2023 Stephen A. de Blasi Poetry Prize. She has 2 poetry chapbooks, Richard Brodigan's Concussion by Bottle Cap Press in 2023 and How to Rob a Convenience Store, published by Cowboy Jamboree Press in 2024. She lives in upstate New York with her dog Tennyson. Welcome, Rachel R. Baum.
Thank you. I'm going to read from How to Rob a Convenience Store. This book came about because gun violence affects all of us, and all of these poems are connected. They involve guns in some way or another. I lived in Montana and Texas, and the gun culture there is pretty prevalent. I just want to mention too that the proceeds from the sale of this book go to the Giffords Law Center to prevent gun violence. I'll read two poems. I'm a narrative poet, so these are stories, basically. This is called Sitting Shiva After the Tree of Life shooting. Even when no one asks, she arrives at the house first, plugs in the electric kettle for tea, arranges slices of lemon on a plate, pours cashews into a bowl, peanuts in another, unwraps a platter of cheese and fruit, turns on the oven to warm the casseroles, checks to be sure the mirrors have already been covered, and they are. So she finds a slip of paper and writes in black marker, "Please do not knock or ring the bell, just walk in," and tapes it to the front door because you don't want to disturb the service that will take place later this afternoon, or the family of the deceased, who will sit on the low stools the funeral home provided, not on the borrowed folding chairs she lines up to face the backyard. In this house, east is in the dining room, where the table has been pushed against a wall, and on each chair she lays a prayer book for the men and women who will come to this house of mourning to pay their respects, as they have already done with the 10 other congregants murdered that awful day. And now everyone knows the routine of the funeral and the cemetery and the Shiva call and wishes they didn't, but they must do this one more time for the 11th soul, so familiar and dear, who thought that God would look kindly upon them all by going to synagogue every Saturday morning. And that was the hardest part. These were friends you looked forward to seeing and praying with, and later filling a paper plate with tuna salad, a piece of challah, maybe some grapes, and always a little chocolate babka, a treat. And then sat and kibitzed with, and yet in a moment, the mourners returning from the cemetery will park their cars and adjust their faces. They will be tired, hungry, and devastated. She will see them from the window and briefly look up to search the sky above the street for a glimpse of sunlight filtering through a blur of leaves. I'm going to read the first poem in the book called Rodeo Winner, and I don't mean to make a pun by saying a trigger warning, but it does allude to domestic violence. Rodeo Winner. The collar and cuffs of his butternut suede jacket were so worn they seemed chewed, fringes twisted and sparse on the sleeves. He was a small man, clean-shaved. He stood wide-legged, his forehead and sunglasses shadowed by the tilt of his hat, dusty as his sharp-heeled boots, fists red-knuckled, beer bottle ready. He had a hold of her long blonde hair last night. She had flinched when he spoke, his voice booming him into height and heft. He didn't like that, the way her eyes took measure of the floorboards and not him. When they went into town, his thigh pressed against hers on the pickup's bench seat. She held his arm as they walked, his thumbs tucked under the tooled leather belt with its hubcap of a buckle he won at last year's Cody Stampede, first place in saddle bronc, so he wore it every day. She had bragged on him to her friends, but then she would say something stupid, and he had to shake the right words from her throat. He considered the 22 Colt Woodsman he used for snakes. It was locked up in the 4x4's metal toolbox, along with the Ruger Blackhawk he kept for fun. Later, maybe, he would open the box long enough to get the Ruger out, fill the yard behind the single wide with the steady whine and crack of target practice, then set it, warm from spent ammo in his hand, on the kitchen table while she made supper, like it was just another extra fork. Thank you.
And that is Rachel R. Baum. Thank you so much. And next up, we have Carl Scharwath. Carl. I know you're here. Give me a wave, Carl.
Here
Oh,
I
there.
am.
Yep, gotcha. Okay. And Carl Scharwath has appeared globally with 175 plus journals selecting his writing or art. He's published 4 poetry books, and his latest book, The World Went Dark, soon to be released by Alien Buddha Press on June 12, 2024. Carl has 4 photography books published by Praxis and Creative Ingenuity. His photography was exhibited in the Mount Dora and Leesburg Center for the Arts. Carl is currently an art editor at Literati and former editor for Minute Magazine. He was nominated for 3 Best of the Net awards, 21-23, and 2 different 2023 Pushcart nominations for poetry and a short story. And welcome to you, Carl Scharwath.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here, and thanks to Jen, Fuzzy Jen, for publishing my poem for Mother's Day, so I appreciate it. So I'm going to read from my new book, The World Went Dark. I'm a photographer and artist, so I did design the cover with my photography and art. And the first poem is Mom, which was just published by you a few weeks ago. Mom, dim light paints the evening scene. She sits alone, a single mom, with burden akin to shadows, always behind her in dreams deferred. Each day is a battle, in long stretches of despair. For her child, she tirelessly strives. Yet the bills persist, a relentless climb. The meager check, a fleeting friend. Electric hums, a grim reminder of bills to come. Water runs cold, a cruel, true metaphor, as warm tears fall on her child's bed. In the gaze of her baby's eyes, love ignites. Navigating storms, her spirits will clash. In her strength, a tale of resilience and will. You, the silent hero, keep your vigil. And my next one is the title of the book, The World Went Dark. She hurled the phone against the wall and crouched under the window. Outside, phones dropped in crashes against the harsh city streets. In a vision of radiation, the screens went blank and the lights flickered. In the unfathomable abyss and the shaking, the world went dark. What is happening? Cries shouted to the Lords of Oath. Second beginnings. A new Garden of Eden will be created from darkness without the digital thunderdrome. Humans would again interact, share, and help each other. The landscape would be clean and pure, the air ready to breathe, and the fortune teller was mistaken. And I'll read one more. This is a prose poem. It's called The Second Coming of Eve. In the tranquil pauses between breaths resonates a silent anthem, echoing through history's corridors. It is the voice of women, not a call to arms, but a gentle yet resolute whisper that reverberates through the ages. A tapestry of femininity woven with threads of courage, resilience, and unyielding determination in the face of past injustices. The emergence of our modern Eve heralds a new era, cultivating her garden with a heart brimming in stories of triumph over adversity and liberation from suicidal constraints. With each stride forward, she uplifts her sisters, harmonizing their voices in a symphony of empowerment. Thank you.
And thank you to Carl Scharwath. And next up, we have Brian Biswas has published. Oh, I'm sorry, Brian. Let me get you on the spotlight first. Brian. Give me a wave, Brian. Oh, there you are. Okay, gotcha. Brian Biswas has published over 60 short stories in the US as well as internationally. He's author of the short story collections A Betrayal and Other Stories and Blister and Other Stories and the novel The Astronomer. Welcome, Brian.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for dropping by. I love this forum. This has been wonderful. So I'm gonna read a basically unclassifiable piece from Blister and Other Stories, which came out this past February. It's called A Love Story. It's a man goes into a bar story, and it goes like this. Phil goes to a bar where he meets Sally. They hit it off, and after talking for several hours, they return to Phil's apartment, where they have sex, which they both find satisfying. They repeat this procedure once a week for the next 2 months. At this point, Sally agrees to move in with Phil. The move goes smoothly. Several of Sally and Phil's friends even help out. Things seem to be going well. On their first anniversary, they go to a restaurant for dinner. They dress up. Sally has never looked more beautiful, nor Phil more handsome. Sally suspects Phil is about to propose. The food is delicious, the service superb. Their waiter delights them with a juggling act done with forks and knives. Sally laughs and rubs her foot against Phil's. Phil looks at Sally. Sally looks at Phil. This is it. Sally says to Phil, I love you. Phil says to Sally, yes. What does this mean? That yes, Phil loves Sally? Or that yes, Phil knows that Sally loves Phil? Or that Phil has simply recognized the predicate Sally has uttered? Or is this simply an equivocation on Phil's part? Is it all or part or none of these things? You can see that the possibilities are endless. And what's Sally to make of this? What's Sally to think? Regardless of what Sally thinks Phil has said, or rather meant, Sally's reply to Phil's equivocation is certain to be equally equivocal, and so on ad infinitum until neither is saying a word the other understands, though each thinks the other understands perfectly. At this point, Sally and Phil sigh dreamily, each thinking that what they wished to hear was what, in fact, they heard. The troubles begin. Phil feels trapped. Phil considers embarking upon another relationship with Joan, but decides against it. Phil cares deeply about Sally. In fact, there's no one Phil cares more about right now than Sally, though Phil isn't prepared to make a lifelong commitment to Sally at this time. Even so, Phil isn't himself. Sally suspects an affair and confronts Phil. Phil denies any involvement. Phil says it's Sally, not he, who has changed. Sally threatens to move out. Phil tells Sally to go ahead. Sally starts to cry. Phil shouts, "This is all Sally's fault." Now both are crying. Phil says to Sally, "You no longer love me." Sally says to Phil, "Yes." What does this mean? That yes, Sally no longer loves Phil? Or that yes, Sally knows that Phil thinks that Sally no longer loves Phil? Or that Sally has simply recognized the predicate Phil has uttered? Or is this simply an equivocation on Sally's part? Is it all or part or none of these things? You can see that the possibilities are endless. And what is Phil to make of all this? What's Phil to think? At this point, Phil is so frustrated over the current state of their relationship that he shouts back in anger, "No, you never loved me." Sally reciprocates with equal ferocity. The conversation deteriorates from there until both throw up their hands in disgust and agree to go their separate ways. The end. My life in 4 minutes.
Thank you, Brian Biswas. Our final panelist of the evening is Marjorie Moorhead. Marjorie, I'm going to give you this. There you are. So Marjorie Moorhead's poetry books are What I Ask, soon to be released on Kelsey Books and Amazon 2024, and Every Small Breeze, published by Kelsey in 2023. The chapbooks In My Locket, Survival, Teas, Tides, Song, and Survival Part 2, Trees, Birds, Ocean Bees. Her poems have appeared in Amethyst Review, Tiny Seed Literary, Moist Poetry Journal, Bloodroot Literary, Sheelanigig, Porterhouse Review, Homing Pigeon, Verse Virtual, What Rough Beast, A River Sings, The Poet's Touchstone, and others, as well as 16 anthologies to date, including The Wonder of Small Things, published by James Krause, edited by James Krause. Marjorie lives and writes from the New Hampshire-Vermont River Valley border. Welcome, Marjorie Moorhead.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly and Jen, for this opportunity. I'm going to jump right in. I'm going to read 2 from Every Small Breeze. And the first one is Since the Epidemic. In the early years of my survival, I kept a downward gaze, not wanting to be seen, not wanting to have to explain. It took joining Instagram to bring my eyes up and raise my look out. I started to see things, details in everyday places. I cataloged rust, paint peeling, bricks and graffiti, dried leaves on old drain grates, and I started sharing, posting with hashtags, winning best picture, contests for doors, wabi-sabi walls, or lost abandoned toys. The outward gaze helped me be more comfortable in a world where I'd lost my place. Eventually, it was poetry I would find as language and space to tell the story of who I am, my journey forward, memories back. Before it goes, remember. Remember when you could sleep at the end of the day with expectation that upon rise, our world would be okay. When you felt a sense of balance under your feet, connection to earth and sky, because they were alive and well, and you could tell that from abundance, birds in the air, flowers in the field, bees in the hive. Remember when clouds were clouds and not hovering doom, foretelling firestorms, flood, polar ablation. Remember when you felt we were marching toward justice, maybe too slowly, but at least in that direction. When you believed in election being fair and true representation without question. Now I'm going to read 3 from my brand new one, What I Ask. This is called Poets and Palm Seeds. Poets float in my sky, a chosen constellation, soothing, reassuring, relating what it means to be human on this planet, in this time, in our bodies, beside others of our kind, and other species too, who live in our world, simply trying to survive, but also to thrive. We all want to thrive, not merely survive. We all have to save one another, stop stepping over each other in our hurry to get somewhere, something. Checkering my Zoom screen, beautifully varied poets, each sharing words from their heart about how we are human at the edge of time. In other words, how we are clinging to a rapidly dying planet. The poets speak of dolphin, they speak of cranes, a fox, of ice, penguins, whales, coral reefs, the Milky Way. Though gathered in hope, we are wet with tears. My heart sinks low, heavy and pulsing. The evening seems to plead with pressed palms. Standing, I leave the desktop to wander a bit, closing curtains as the sky grows darker, looking longingly for a glimpse of our moon, super and blue at the end of this month, a gateway month leading to change. We feel it in the air tonight. I've seen it written on leaves along my walking path. Back in my seat now, focused on the screen, Angela Torres reads her poem about palm seeds and harvesting the heart. And so I'll read this one. Shared space. Ask me why I'm so drawn to the bird feeder outside our back window. I'll start telling you of big blue jays, cherubic chickadees, clumsy beaked cardinals, finches, nuthatches, wrens, and even woodpeckers who appear eager for black oil sunflower seeds hung in a tube with holes and perches. Looking out, I am lost in feathers and swoops, satisfied hunger and cooperative acceptance of other in shared space. Not like our headlines, stories focused on divisiveness, violence, need, exploitation, greed. The birds don't want all the food. They want to be fed just like the rest of us. Somehow they manage to attend to need side by side or in turn, yellow feathers near blue, red feathers near brown, black caps and tufted together, coexisting. And last, I'll read Summoning What is Dear. I like to wear abalone's shell at my ear, a drop that hangs from silver to glimmer. It's glimmer holding all of ocean's wonder, all of smell and feel and hear. Above pebbled shores, gulls float and surf the air. Time and swell-softened treasure is found alongside purple jellyfish, splayed near sandy seaweed, strands, and gnarls. Fluted clamshell crescents, crabs, translucent green sea glass, twist-shaped driftwood. Flat disc sand dollars stamped with a star, secretly carrying tiny white doves. Speedy sandpipers with spindly legs racing salty waves, endless charge and retreat. A trick I do carries all this for me, summoning what is dear. I wear a shard of shimmer, once home to soft-bodied creature, held close, precious, iridescent, dangling as a promise, open as can be. Thank you.
Marjorie Moorhead, thank you. Wow, okay, we have heard from all of our panelists wonderfully. I think we're only going to have time for one question, and I am going to pose it. I would love if each panelist would briefly, if you're willing, share one obstacle you had to overcome in the process of publishing one of the books you read from tonight. Because some of you, I think, read from more than one, but one obstacle that you had to overcome in the process. Could be internal, it could be external. Mona, go ahead. Love to hear from you. Thanks.
Yeah, my publisher is in Australia. My obstacle I had to overcome was money. And so I found a publisher on Twitter, and he just happens to be in Australia. He published this book and the next one. So the other obstacle is place and postage and time in the mail. So yeah, so those are what I had to overcome.
Thank you, Mona. Thanks for jumping in. Who else of our panelists would like to answer the question? Rachel, I think I see your hand. Go ahead and unmute.
I think the hardest thing that I had to do was the title. A lot of people said you can't name your book that. You should name it Language of Guns or something like that. But I wanted to make the book. It's actually the title of one of the poems in the book. But I also wanted to make the book such that maybe people who didn't think about reading poetry might pick it up. So far it's proved me out that, people will pick it up. How to Rob a Convenience Store is kind of intriguing. So.
Good for you. Thank you. Thank you. And another of our panelists answer that question, please. Do I see a hand? I think I see Brian. Yes.
Yeah, probably the biggest obstacle. This is a collection of short stories. And probably the biggest obstacle I had was in how to arrange the stories so that it flowed. I would try this and I'd try that, and no, it doesn't work. And so that was probably the most difficult thing. Do you try to do it chronologically? No, that doesn't work. Do you want to do it thematically? It's probably the same with a poetry collection too, I'd imagine. So that's the biggest obstacle I had.
Thank you so much, Brian. And Richard, did I see your hand?
Yes, yeah.
There you are.
My collection, the name of it, Unashamed Observations, was accepted by Fomite Press in Vermont, and was accepted for maybe about eight months or so. Then the editor, who had published another collection of epigrams, decided not to publish it because of the changes in it. And then I was fortunate enough to get Unsolicited Press to publish it. So,
wonderful. The ups and downs.
Yes.
We all have them. Thank you so much. Birdman 313, do you have anything?
No, mine went fairly easy, just finding someone to publish my book, because the gentleman that I had been using for my previous 8 books or 9 books, 8 books, he said he wasn't doing it no more, and he was getting with a company, and he wouldn't even return my calls or texts. So I had to actually go and look for someone, which I did. I found someone, and hey, I'm happy with them because my book cover is awesome. I think it is.
So you had to strike out on your own and leave the
Yes.
nest, and you solved the problem. Wonderful. Thank you, Birdman.
Yes.
313.
Yes.
Marjorie, anything?
I actually had a long journey with my first one, Every Small Breeze, where the person who really encouraged me to make a manuscript and submit it had a very small press. His life went through a lot of changes. He went through a divorce with his husband of many years, and the pandemic, and so we parted ways. And I had to find I asked my blurbers, like, what am I going to do? And 2 people suggested the place that actually ended up publishing it. So I'm happy, and we're still friends, the other guy. So it all worked out. But it was a bit of like a up and down emotionally, I think, for a while.
It can be, yes, that roller coaster. Wow. Thank you so much, Marjorie. How about you, Kaz or Carl? Kaz, you want to go?
Yes, I could answer that.
Oops, Carl's going, and then I'll get back to you, Kaz. Go ahead,
Sorry.
Carl. That's okay.
I think the most important thing is the cover. It's first impressions, designing a cover. I do my own art. I do the own covers, so I'm always worried about if it's going to be acceptable and fit in with the work. But I also share my covers with artists around the world. So I'm pretty active on Facebook, and I have people asking me from other countries, can you design my cover? How much you charge? I said, I'll do it for free. I am honored to be on your book. So I've done about 15 different covers around the world for other artists.
Well, Thank you. Thank you so much, Carl, for
Thank you.
letting us know that. And Kaz, how about you?
Well, I didn't show my book before, so this is the cover. And I think one of the biggest obstacles for me in any of my books was one, understanding what it took for me to feel successful. And it didn't necessarily mean selling tons of books. So that was a really interesting. So I came away with years later is write the best storybook theme I can, and all the rest is gravy. But the main obstacle is to find the right editor. As a creative writer and not a novelist, different types of people will. So I have been very, very fortunate to find several good editors I've used with each of my books, and I'm a happy camper with them. Very, very grateful.
Thank you. Thank you, Kaz. I think we've heard from all of our panelists now with the answer to the question, and we're going to move into the open mic. We're so grateful to our panelists. We don't have applause, but I know you'll continue to share in the chat room any positive words that you have for our wonderful authors here tonight. Jen, thank you. I was just about to ask for that. And so just a reminder to our readers in the open mic, and excuse me for 1 second, I want to stop the recording. Oops.